Something that you would never expect to ask them, but you definitely should, is when... Hi guys, what is up? My name is Kate. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you've not been here before. I am so excited to be doing this little mini series on my channel. So I am a wedding videographer and photographer on the side of my full-time job. It has been absolutely crazy. I've shot 19 weddings so far. I have 6 more this year. I have 16 booked for 2021, and I've actually been getting inquiries for 2022, which is so awesome. And I'm so incredibly blessed and happy to have had such an awesome start to my career. So I swear to you, I have seen some of the absolute craziest things while shooting weddings. Every single wedding is so different, and thank God I've never worked with a bad couple. Everyone has been so kind, so caring. Everything that went wrong was literally just things that you wouldn't necessarily expect to happen and you couldn't really plan for, but if you knew ahead of time, it might be a little bit easier to plan for when it comes to this. So I'm gonna give you guys some unique things to think about when planning a wedding that I, from a wedding photographer, have experienced while shooting a wedding. And then if you guys like this video, let me know, because I want to do some of my favorite things that I've seen at weddings that are unique and some of the craziest things that I've seen at weddings, because there's a lot of them. But let's get into the video. Okay, first up, we're going to talk about getting ready on site. So I've seen 2 different types of things. Either you get ready off site and then you come to the venue, or you get ready at the venue. And some venues do not offer getting ready on site. So something that I would highly recommend is finding a venue that does let you get ready in like a bridal suite or a groomsman suite, because a lot of times you miss out on those opportunities of getting the shots of getting ready. And some of my favorite shots are while people are getting ready and like they're loosening up and they're having mimosas, and I love to make people like do a impromptu speech that's not planned or written down. So maybe someone that's not giving a speech during the wedding is someone that's going to make a toast during this time, and it just gets people pumped and ready. So I would highly recommend getting ready on site if possible. It also will help your timeline move a lot better and a lot less stress, because having to drive, you never know what's going to happen from your house to the venue. So it's better to just come to the venue as early as possible and get ready there if that's an option. So I would highly recommend that. So let's talk about first looks. My puppy has just joined us. Hello, Tater. Okay, something that I have seen a lot recently is first looks. It's very in right now, but apparently it's not very traditional. I absolutely love first looks, but there are pros and cons of having a first look versus not. And a lot of times when I'm sitting down on the phone with my brides or my couples, they're like, should we do a first look? Like, why should we not? So I'm gonna tell you guys why you should or should not have a first look, and then you guys can make the decision on if you wanna have it or not. So the first reason that I think first looks are really good is because it kind of gets rid of the nerves. So if you're a nervous person and you don't like to speak in front of people, having a first look is really, really good, because you get to see that person before. But the flip side to this is, because you're seeing that person before the ceremony, you're not getting that huge emotional, oh my god, when you walk down the aisle, because they've already seen you. It's going to be emotional because that's like it, you're doing the dang thing, but it's not going to be as emotional if you do a first look, but it's going to calm a lot of those nerves that happen. So if you are reading vows, personal vows during the ceremony, you're going to be able to read them a lot better without shaking as much, because you've seen that person. But if you're someone that doesn't like to speak in front of people, if you want to have that intense first moment when you walk down the aisle, but you also don't want to read your vows in front of people, something that I really like doing is getting my couples back to back, whether it is on each side of a door or having you guys read your notes to each other back to back, or your vows or something sweet that you want to say, and then not turning around. So having that first look but not having that first look. So I call those first touches, where you guys can like feel around the corner and hold each other's hands. You guys can pray together if that's something that you guys do, everything like that. So it's really up to you if that's your cup of tea, if you don't want to see each other beforehand. But the other flip side to having a first look is it makes your timeline go a lot smoother. So you can get all your bridesmaids and groomsmen photos out of the way before the ceremony. You can get your photos with your significant other done before the ceremony, things like that. So it's completely up to you if you want to do this or not, but those are some of the pros and cons for why you should or should not have a first look. And Taya wants to walk across me while I'm filming. Now we're going to talk about the actual ceremony as a whole. I'm going to kind of go out of order here, but let's talk about the actual walk down. So a lot of the times people get married in a grassy area, or I've seen it at wineries. I've seen, usually it's like in grass if it's an outside wedding. And a lot of the times I will see people use paper trains to walk down. So the rest of the bridal party and groomsmen party will walk down the aisle and they will just walk on the grass. When the bride comes out, I've seen them use like a paper trail for her to walk down. So like a train, kind of like a long carpet, but it's like paper or a very light fabric. I highly suggest not doing this. If you want to walk down something special, maybe get a heavier rug or a carpet runner or just something heavier, because I've seen this so many times. If you're walking onto the grass, the bottom of your shoes are going to be wet. Typically, even if it's not a wet day, it'll usually get kind of sticky on the bottom of your heels. And then when you walk down that paper train, you are going to stick to it. It's going to be hard to walk down. Your dress is going to get tangled in it. I just highly suggest finding something heavier, or if you just want to walk down the grass, I totally support this. I think it's so beautiful. It's not going to change anything, but if you do want to have something special to walk down, I would definitely recommend getting something a little bit heavier than a piece of material or fabric. Definitely a rug or something with some kind of weight to it. And while we're on the topic of ceremonies, let's talk about unplugged weddings. For the most part, most weddings that I've shot are unplugged, and that means that you can't have your phones or cameras out while the wedding is happening. I mean, as a photographer, I feel like any photographer or videographer is going to agree, like, make sure it's unplugged. But on top of just making it unplugged, you need to have your officiant announce it at the beginning of the ceremony, because you can invest in these beautiful signs that say like, hey guys, please don't use your phones during the ceremony. They're not going to see it. They're going to sit down and immediately take their phones out, and it's going to ruin your shots. Yes, you can edit sometimes, but if you have someone with their phone like out in the middle of the aisle during the first kiss and you lost that edited moment because Aunt Jill wants it on her phone. So not to be rude, you can say it as polite as possible, but hey guys, this is going to be an unplugged ceremony. Please put your phones away. The photographers and videographers are here to do their job. We're going to capture every moment and make sure that you guys have access to these photos as soon as possible. So please make it unplugged. And saying it is so much more effective than people just seeing the sign and being like, oh, I'm going to do it anyways. And another thing, I will say this over and over and over and over again, and I definitely think everyone needs to hire a coordinator. Please, God, hire a coordinator. You might think that it'll be easy to coordinate your own wedding or have a family member do it, but 9 times out of 10, there's going to be issues here and there where your family member needs to be in the wedding at some point and they can't coordinate, or your bridesmaid, or just have an outside person be a coordinator. And even if it's just a day of coordinator, it'll make your day go so much smoother. I've coordinated so many weddings as a photographer, and it's so much harder on the photographer to do. And you know, if I'm trying to get people in line for the walk down, I'm not going to be able to get the shots of people interacting before the wedding, and you just missed out on more shots that you could have had, when it might have been easier to have someone there coordinating that knows more of what they're doing, has a plan for you, and all that kind of stuff. So I highly recommend getting a coordinator. In all, it'll be easier on you. It'll make the day flow so much smoother. Most weddings that I have shot, they usually do run late or behind, so do not worry about that. It happens. Not every wedding goes on schedule, so if you're behind on the timeline, you'll just find a way to make it up later. Some things move along quicker than you expected. Some things take a little bit longer, so don't stress yourself out. It'll all come together. It'll totally be fine. And then while talking about coordinators, another thing, if you do have a coordinator or a venue person that's your coordinator, or a day of coordinator, something that you would never expect to ask them, but you definitely should, is when is cleanup time? I worked a wedding for a really good friend of mine, and she was very upset because the alcohol wasn't provided. So for the champagne toast, they had to provide their own alcohol. So as soon as we did the toast and everything, the bride and groom sat down their drinks for like 2 seconds to take a photo, and they came back and all of the tables were already bussed. So nobody got to enjoy their champagne. That was a huge part of their budget that was just taken from them. And then on top of that, the same wedding, this venue started bussing the tables and cleaning up and taking down decorations 2 hours before the wedding was over. And yeah, bussing tables is totally fine. It makes it cleaner, it makes it easier to photograph, makes it easier for people to let loose and unwind. But if they're moving everything and they're putting everything away, people are gonna think the wedding is over. And if you paid for that space until 10 o'clock, they're just trying to get out a little bit sooner. And I totally feel for people that want to go home early when they're working all day and it's exhausting. I've been there, but I definitely think it's a conversation you should have and be aware of so that you're not being kicked out of your venue 2 hours early because all of your guests think it's over. So definitely a good point. All right, let's talk about reception. Okay, so I have a couple things about receptions that I've noticed. First of all, I would highly recommend not serving red wine at your reception. I love red wine. That's probably my drink of choice when it comes to wine, but one of my horror stories, and if I do make a worst things I've seen at a wedding, this is probably one of them. One of the bridesmaids bumped into the bride and spilled red wine all over her beautiful wedding gown, and luckily the bride was so chill about it, but if it was me, I probably would have had an ultimate panic attack. So things are probably gonna spill when you're dancing and everything, but red wine is not an easy one to get out of a white dress, so I would highly recommend not serving red wine at your reception. And then following that, let's talk about the grand exit. I have seen so many cool exits, like from bubbles to sparklers to chants for football games and, you know, shaking the pom-poms for football games because they both went to the same college. I've seen some cool stuff, but let's talk about sparklers in particular. One of the weddings I worked with a photographer, and she was very weird about sparklers, and I was like, hey, like, can you let me know, like, why are you so iffy about sparklers? And she said that so when everyone's lined up, it's usually at the end of the night, so people are usually pretty intoxicated. When you're supposed to raise your sparklers up in the air, some people will kind of lean them down a little bit, and they burned off the photographer's hair. I don't even know what I would do. I would go home and cry myself to sleep. Like, there's no fine, there's no anything that could make up for your photographer's hair getting burned off. So I highly recommend an alternative. They look great on photo, but there's so many cool things I've done. I've seen bubbles, like I mentioned before, and it was so freaking awesome. But can you imagine if it was like the bride or the groom, or I mean the photographer? I can't even imagine getting burned by a sparkler, but it's just, they're hard to light sometimes, and it's very dangerous, and I just wouldn't recommend doing sparklers. If that's what your dream fairy tale wedding looks like, do it, but just be very cautious about it when you're planning it. Okay, something I forgot to talk about earlier that I think might be beneficial is fake flowers versus real flowers for your wedding. And I've seen both, and there are pros and cons to both. The cost is probably the biggest pro and con. Real flowers are very expensive. They range to be big parts of your wedding budget. They look absolutely stunning, and I love a good real flower, but the flip side of that is they're very heavy. So if the bride gets a big bouquet and they're carrying it all day, most of the time you're wanting to set it down, you don't want to carry it, it's super heavy, you don't want to hold it for pictures. So I definitely think having fake flowers in that sense helps. Real flowers photograph so much better. If you're doing centerpieces that are fake, totally fine. Maybe you could do a mix of them. Maybe you could use real eucalyptus and mix it in with some fake flowers and make it look really pretty. But just be very particular about the kind of fake flowers you like and buy, because some of them can look so real and some of them can look so fake. And I mean, it's a win-lose situation on both sides. You know, it's going to be heavy, but it's going to be stunning. It's going to be light, but it might not photograph well. So there's pros and cons to both real and fake flowers. Okay, so now I just have 4 little mini thoughts that are from my personal experience. Definitely don't have to do this. The first one that I'm going to talk about, venues give you different vibes, and I've shot some of the same venues before. I've shot at different venues. I think that the venue you choose can give you a certain outcome. So if you choose more of a home-ish kind of venue, it's mostly going to be like families and not a lot of crazy drinking and partying. And then if you choose other venues, they can be like party hardy, crazy. So something I recommend is going on their Instagram, the venue's Instagram, looking through tagged photos and seeing what other people tagged and seeing the vibe you can get from that video. Is it romantic? Is it party hardy? You know, what's your vibe? If you're someone that likes that classic, you know, beautiful look, or if you're someone that wants like a boho feel, I mean, of course your decoration is going to play a big part of it, but you can definitely get different vibes from different venues. And then another thing is a personal opinion. I love when my couples send me an invite to their wedding. It makes me so happy. I have a bulletin board in my office of all of the different weddings that I've shot, and so I highly recommend sending your vendors, at least your photographer and videographer, maybe your coordinator depending, an invite to your wedding. It just makes them feel special. We're one of the guests even though we're not, and I just absolutely love it. I get really close with my couples. I don't know if that's just me, but my couples that I have, they could text me after the wedding. I would love to shoot them again. It's just, I love having that connection, and I love getting invites to weddings. All right, another random thing that I'm gonna throw out there is I highly recommend not getting married in a park or a public space like that, only because I shot a beautiful wedding at this huge park in a downtown area, and a homeless woman walked in and kind of stirred the pot. So take that as you will, but that's it. And the last thing, totally optional, but I recommend taking mints with you the day of and not gum, because everyone's like, oh my god, my breath, I have to make sure my breath is good. You know, I've seen it a million times. Bring mints, not gum, because the last thing you want is to be staying there at the altar and you're like, nom, 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 and then it's just awkward and you're like, what do I do with this? Do I swallow it? Do I start choking on it? I don't know what to do. So bring mints, not gum, and have someone else pack them, because it's not your responsibility on the day of. It is someone else to take care of you, right? Right. All right. That's all for this video. I just wanted to share some thoughts with you guys. I'm sure I'll have a part 2 of this video coming up in the future, especially with all my weddings coming up. I'm always learning new things. So grateful that I've had the absolute most amazing couples that I've worked with. They're so nice, and I absolutely am blessed to have them. But I do have some crazy stories, and I have some amazing stories that I've gotten. So let me know what you guys like. If you like this series, let me know. Comment down below. Let me know what your favorite part is. Did any of this change your mind when you were, you know, contemplating planning, or is this something that you haven't thought of? Let me know. What do you like? All right, guys, have a great rest of your week. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.